Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. I'm Justin. I'll be your host tonight, and with me today are Cody and Matt.
Hey.
Um,
Hey,
and before we get into our topic, which is a return to a sort of subject we haven't really touched on in a while, let's catch up on what everyone's been doing for the past week or so. Cody, why don't you start?
well, I have been home sick for the the last 3 days. No, I did do
You
school.
lucky
No, I
bastard.
did miss school Friday, so this has been 3 days. Today I feel a little bit stronger. Finally, haven't required a nap, but my sleeping is still terrible and other symptoms that I've been fighting as well. But what it has let me do the last 2 days, Friday and Saturday, is I basically laid on the couch dead and played video games straight for 2 days, which was fantastic. I haven't done that in forever, so.
I
Put a
mean,
lot of time into Fire Emblem Three Hopes. Going back, mentioned maybe on a prior podcast, trying to finish all of the games I was halfway through. So I'm kind of going back my started backlog, if that's a thing, and try to finish some games off. So I did get quite a bit further in the game. I don't know how much is left, but enjoying it immensely. Although my favorite character in the game series, I was saying, died Friday when I was playing, which was, I don't want to talk
rip.
about it, but it was very emotional. Yeah. So that's what I mostly have been up to.
What game is this?
That's Fire Emblem Three Hopes.
Oh, Fire Emblem. Yes.
Yeah.
How's the voice acting in that one? Because I've been playing through Fire Emblem Engage recently, and it's very hit or miss.
Um I mean, well, did you like the voice acting in Three Houses?
Yeah, that was
It's the
decent.
same cast, it's the same people talking,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's good. I mean, it's the same. It is really weird. Like, we'll have to talk about these games at some point, but it's weird they like took that first game's story and like remixed it essentially, and that's what this game is. Like, it's really weird. The protagonist of the first game is the antagonist of this game, so it's very
Huh.
strange. The character you play as in Three Houses is the primary villain in Three Hopes, so it's very weird how they like twisted it around and redid the whole plot. But
Interesting.
yeah, very interesting. Son of a bitch.
Well, while Cody takes care of whatever that was, Matt, what have you been up to?
Just same old, same old. My life is pretty I don't want to say boring as of right now. Not boring, but it's very repetitive. Wash, rinse, repeat. Um, come up with what to teach the middle schoolers the next day and then teach it the next day and hope to God I have enough material to keep going to get through to the end of the day each day. That's kind of it.
Huh.
Um, so
Sounds very much like trying to run a D&D game.
yeah, actually it's not all that dissimilar. And I used to be when I used to do D&D, I was a decent DM back in like high school and whatnot, but nowadays I find I can't just like talk on the cusp, which is also why I'm not very particularly good at this. Um, so if I run out of stuff to say, it's just ends. So
Oh, all right.
so
We'll do our best
what?
to keep you going.
Thanks. Um, but we had well, essentially a 4-day weekend this weekend, which is nice. We had to be there on Friday, but there were no kids. It was a
Oh,
professional development day and a teacher
nice.
work day.
Oh, okay.
So, and then nothing tomorrow.
Cool.
Although I'm going to be planning what to do all week, so it's almost not a day off. It's like
Oh,
a day.
Yeah, tomorrow's a work day.
a day to
Trying to
brace
decide what I want to
yourself.
do next year. If I want to try to move up in grades and deal with older kids,
Yep.
or whether I want to stay where I am
Nope.
and not have to create new material or
You want to
completely
move.
new material.
You want
Like
to move
I
up.
know what I'll be doing. So
Is moving
Well,
up an option?
I don't know. That's the thing.
Always take the move up. It's a trick question. Always take the move up.
Really?
Yes. My
I'll take your
opinion.
word for that. I'm the only non-teacher here, so
Older kids are just,
See,
you can do more
here's
with
the
them.
thing. My wife teaches grade school, so she always takes the move down. Like she's at
ah,
second grade now, and like last time she was at second grade, and they offered her first, she moved right to first. So I'm used
Really?
to seeing it. Yeah,
Now that's even interesting because I know elementary teachers here too, and they generally always prefer to move up a grade as well. So that's interesting. But I guess it depends on your personality. It all comes down to your personality. So, yeah.
It's
Hardly
they're get,
interrupt.
to be fair, they are getting better. Well, as my sister put it, she said it's more that it's becoming less scary and new and just scary and routine.
Okay,
So there's a lot of truth to that, but
that's
no.
fair.
I still like all
Interesting.
I like all the kids, just general
Yeah.
as one kid. There's nobody I really dislike, but man, you put them together and they forced to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
I was sorry about my interruption there. I was pouring one out for my character that I lost. Apparently,
Oh,
knocked over my Bacardi. So, whoopsie.
oh man.
Mm.
Well, on that note, it's been kind of also business as usual on my end. Although with the recent news that has dropped that Microsoft is going to be completely and forcibly deleting Internet Explorer from pretty much every computer that still has it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens at my job once that goes through, because for whatever damn reason, we're still using that for everything we do there. And that's going to be fun. But like you two, I also have tomorrow off,
Nice.
so I don't have to worry about it for a little bit at least. And we'll see if anything is usable on Tuesday.
How is Microsoft going to do that? Like they can't like go into every. I mean, they could probably just make it so that I guess the program doesn't work somehow. But I mean, like
I think it's an update to Windows itself that once you install it, it removes IE entirely.
huh?
I think that's my
Well, I found a
understanding
way
of it.
to hack my computer to get like old apps that are gone back,
Huh.
like the old picture viewer, which I prefer to the new one.
I mean, maybe there's a way. Maybe my
But
bosses will look to
my
do
old
that.
workplace was like yours. The main program, C2W, it
Hmm.
only ran through IE for some reason.
Yeah,
I tried Firefox, it wouldn't work. I tried Chrome, it wouldn't work. I tried what's the new one? Edge
Edge.
didn't work on that. So
Huh.
I
Yeah.
hopefully they've updated that so that it works on some other browser.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what date that's going to happen. I don't know if it's already happened, but we'll see. Aside from that, though, as I mentioned earlier, I've been playing through more of Fire Emblem Engage, solid game, and picked up the PC port of Returnal that dropped this week, and very solid. It's that one is hard to describe. It's kind of a sci-fi third-person shooter, psychological horror, bullet hell roguelike, if that
Wow.
makes any sense at all. And it's
that's
it,
a lot of
Yeah.
modifiers there.
Yeah.
yeah, but it all comes together really, really well.
Hmm.
The story isn't very clear, at least at the beginning, but it's starting to come together as you explore. It involves a time loop. Death is not permanent, but everything changes when you do die. It's weird and intriguing, and I like it so far. And it's freaking gorgeous, so that helps. But yeah, other than like the gaming and some of the research I've been doing for this, been business as usual on my end too, for the most part.
What's the weather been
Uh,
there last couple days?
all over the place.
Oh, really?
The week started out in the 40s, dropped into like the teens, and it's currently like high 20s and snowing last I checked. So it has been all over the place.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They did cancel up in my neck of the woods. There's an annual sled dog race that they have, has been going on for I'm not
They
quite sure how
canceled the
long.
UP 200?
Yep, for the first time in its
Oh,
history, it was
Wow.
canceled due to weather. I mean,
wow.
they canceled it a couple of years for COVID, but that was different. This is the first time in its history it's ever been preemptively canceled because the conditions wouldn't support it. And yeah, that's kind of terrible. But because it draws in a lot of people, it draws in tourists and thus money and everything. So I don't know what kind of a financial impact this will have on the area, but it's probably not going to be good. But yay, climate change, I guess.
My
Anyway,
my nephew said they canceled NMU one day, even.
I don't follow that as much as I used to back when I was enrolled, but
Yeah.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Mm.
But anyway, if we're all caught up, are we ready to move on to the matter at hand, our subject for today's episode?
Sure.
All right. So this is one originally I believe we were going to be doing back in October for our whole like spooky month that we were doing.
That does sound right.
And yeah, something came up. It got replaced with the episode we did about the Jersey Devil, I believe. So today we're finally coming back around and covering the topic of Mothman. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Mothman is a generally American cryptid, where it's most of the stories surrounding it, at least when it first emerged, centered around a town called Point Pleasant, West Virginia, back in the 60s. But before we go too deep into what this thing is and the stories around it, how did all of us come to hear of this thing? Because it's once we start going into details, it's going to emerge that it's pretty weird and unique. So I'm kind of curious how we all learned about it.
It's a great question. I'm trying to think back to when I would have heard about this first. Probably through some book that had things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. I would guess this must have been in something like that. Because I feel like I feel like I knew about this before the movie came out. It says that was 2002. Mothman Prophecies, which we may reference later on here, but I feel like I would have probably got it from some kind of cryptid book or something, probably from the library, maybe at some point.
Okay. And how about you, Matt?
That's kind of a longer story, but excuse me, I was trying to finish my apple while Cody was giving his story.
Sorry, I was looking
That's
something
okay.
up in the background. I didn't have the video feed.
Oh, that's fine. So I am a huge fan of the TV show Unsolved Mysteries. Okay. The original with Robert Stack that was from like 87 to 2002 on various networks with a couple of gaps. And they did a rather late episode on this one, which I don't recall seeing as it originally aired, but there was a time in my life where I was a particularly poor student, and this is how I like to describe how bad of a student I was. This is before I left college for a while, by the way. So I had a class that was in a building that I didn't have to leave the building to get to that class. I literally just had to go down the stairs and walk down the hall. For those of you who have any idea where this is, I lived in Cody, what the hell's the name of that hall? Spooner. And then the old art and design stuff was like connected to it. It was in Lee Hall. So I just had to like walk down the stairs and walk across, and there was my photography class. It was at noon. I would get up, sit on my couch, turn on my TV to Lifetime, to which at noon they had 2 episodes of Unsolved Mysteries airing back to back. And I would just watch the time pass and think to myself how terrible of a person I am. Anyway, that's probably where I saw it first. One of the interesting things in the episode is they continually say that it takes place in Point Pleasant, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
So when I actually moved to West Virginia for a while, I spent a decent chunk of time living in West Virginia, several summers and an entire year. But I remember thinking, if I could go over to Virginia and see where Mothman was from. And I was assuming it must have been on the eastern side of the state. And then someone told me that Point Pleasant bordered Ohio. And I'm like, Virginia doesn't touch Ohio. How does that even work? And I just found out it was a hilariously bad mistake on their part. But here's what's funny about it to me. Living in West Virginia as long as I had, you get to know that people get offended by certain things. They could have made this mistake like calling North Carolina South Carolina or North Dakota South Dakota. And I don't know, maybe they get as pissed off as West Virginians do. Maybe. I don't know, but I've never heard that. But like I did an entire show down there every summer that was just like literally about, we need to split from these rich Eastern aristocrats and form our own state. We're West Virginia. And I'm like it's like when they sent out the absentee ballots and I believe it was the 2000 election, and they all came to our dorm room, Cody, and it didn't have the UP on it, like at all. And just like people were just like angry and pissed off about it. Like, think of that level of anger. Like that must be like, I'm sitting there and I'm watching that episode after I'd lived down there for, and I'm like, man, this has got to piss West Virginians the hell off, like terribly.
Them's fighting
But
words.
the funny thing to me though is when they finally re-released all like a good portion of the series a few years ago on Amazon Prime and a bunch of other things. This was one of the ones that they added or they put in, and they insert. It's as bad as CGIing Han shooting first.
Okay.
That's what it's like, but it's the audio version of that. It's like in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's like they just insert it, and they only do it once just to like, okay, listen, guys, we understand that this is a mistake. We'll forgive us, please. So I don't know, but when I was on, and I mean, how much do you want me to go in here? I can save the rest for later.
I mean, I think that's good for like
Yeah, it's
an
good
establishment.
for the
Yeah.
intro, I
All
think.
right.
Yeah. So that leaves me. I have always been kind of interested in this sort of thing. Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, aliens, X-Files really kicked that off for me. But I don't really think I had ever heard of Mothman in particular until the movie came out, The Mothman Prophecies. And I remember there were a lot of ads for it, and it's like, based on a true story, and it was something I'd never heard of. It looked really weird. I sat down and watched it, or tried to watch it, when some friends rented it from like Blockbuster, and I have never made it through that film. I've tried and failed like 3 times to actually sit through this thing, and I've fallen asleep every single time.
Dun dun dun.
But that said, that was my first introduction to the idea of, okay, there's this thing I've never heard of that's apparently a big part of West Virginian folklore. The movie didn't do it for me, but the rest of the reading that's available out there might be better. Whether or not it is, we'll get to that as the episode goes on. But yeah, that was my first introduction. Thank you, Hollywood. But so
We'll make a better movie next time.
exactly.
Right.
It's based on a book. I don't know. Maybe the book is better. Okay.
Okay.
Admission. I've never seen that movie. I've been curious about it.
It's not great.
But
I mean, maybe if you're like a really big fan. Oh God, who was in it? Richard Gere? I think it was Richard Gere.
I thought it was David Duchovny for some reason.
Well, there is an X-Files episode that has a Mothman style villain in one of the Villain of the Week episodes.
Yeah.
This
So
from,
either that one blanked out of my mind, or
season 5, episode 4, called Detour.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that a little more later on.
Sure.
Okay.
But yeah, so before we go too much further, I suppose we should say a little bit about exactly what the heck this thing is. We've alluded to it, we've kind of danced around the subject, but Mothman was a the descriptions vary a little bit, but they all have certain things in common. A 5 to 10 foot tall man-shaped creature with wings, and sometimes it's described as having feathers, sometimes it's having like fur, but glowing red eyes are the other common feature to it. And it was said to have appeared several times in West Virginia in the mid 60s. Oftentimes said to portend disasters or to try and warn people about things, but it's something that's usually seen at night. So it's the depictions aren't usually very clear about it, but 5 to 10 feet tall, wingspan of about 15 to 20 feet generally, glowing red eyes, wings, feathers, or fur. And that's usually kind of the commonality between all of the sightings. So a really weird amalgamation of traits, because you think Bigfoot, it's just like it's an ape that's been lost to time, or like Nessie, it's it's a dinosaur that somehow survived until the present day.
Yeah.
Mothman's a lot weirder and a lot harder to pin down as to exactly how the stories came about, and if it is a hoax, like why someone would choose something this outlandish. But what do you guys think? Should we get into just the history of the creature itself, or I mean beyond that, like the actual sightings and that sort of thing?
Yeah, let's get into the history. I think you're right though, in that like if somebody were to make a hoax, I guess just to keep in mind as we go through these quote unquote eyewitness reports, you are onto something there where you say like this would be like something somebody had completely invented from their imagination because it doesn't really follow any logical extension of anything that exists in our world.
Mhm.
So just keep that in mind, I guess.
Yeah. There are some theories that touch upon what its origins might be. We'll get to those as we go.
Yeah, we will.
Oh yes. But in terms of like the sightings, so it's arguable as to what the first ever sighting of Mothman was, but the first American sighting was, as far as I've been able to tell, November 2nd, 1966. Where was that? Nope. Hang on. Sorry. Like I said, these notes are from about 4 months ago. I need to make sure I've got them all right. Okay. So November 2nd, 1966, a man named Woodrow Derenberger says he was driving home one night and he was cut off on the road by a, well, he thought it was a car, but it ended up, and this will give you an idea of how strange all of this is. He said he thought it was a car, but when he got closer to it and gave it a closer look, it resembled, and I quote, a kerosene lamp chimney. And from it emerged a man who had introduced himself as Indrid Cold, who was wearing a metallic blue coat. And he had a 10-minute conversation with this guy who never moved his lips. And basically, the guy said he was from, and I quote, another galaxy. And there were witnesses to this, but this is the first thing that even kind of remotely, ties into the mythos, because you'll see as we go on that Mothman has a very strong connection to UFOs, at least in West Virginia. So that was the first sign that something was weird. But the first sighting of Mothman itself, and not just something bizarre going on around that
Yeah, I
area.
never heard of that thing, by the way.
Yeah, that was
never heard of that. I kind of want to know your source on that one.
I would hang on. I have a couple of notes here that were about that, but like I said, months ago. I will have to dig that up. I'll get back to you later on that.
I have that
Okay.
same thing on a website I'm looking at here as well from the
Okay.
planet Lanulos.
I don't think that was my source.
Lanulos.
The
so
man
yeah,
even claimed
that Derenberger even claimed he visited the planet that the creature was from.
I had not heard about that one, but 10 days later, the first like sign of Mothman in the flesh, flying around and whatnot, was on November 12th, 1966, where 5 gravediggers were at work one evening and they saw it fly overhead, a man-like figure with wings, and I believe they saw the glowy eyes as well. And then we get into the more well-known sightings. 3 days later, November 15th, and again, these were all in or around Point Pleasant, West Virginia. That is where, what was her name? Linda Scarberry, I believe, was the first one, the first eyewitness that really made the headlines. She and a couple of friends, and one of which who ended up becoming her husband at one point, were out driving on a cold night around 11:30, and they saw a figure about 7 feet tall that was kind of man-shaped, but it had wings that rose up above its shoulders, a thin muscular body, flesh-colored wings, and an ashy white coloration to the rest of it, which is different from most of the later descriptions of the thing, which describe it as dark gray or black. And it had hypnotizing or mesmerizing eyes.
Ooh.
She said that when they found it, its wing was caught in a guide wire near the road, and it couldn't get free. It seemed scared, but they also were scared of it, so they didn't go and try to help. Eventually, it got itself free and either ran or flew into a nearby power plant. So that was the first big sighting of it, and others followed with let's see, there was an area around there referred to as the TNT area, which was a former munitions depot during World War II, and a lot of the sightings took place there.
I think people hung around it kind of like we used to hang around the orphanage.
we
That
we
makes
don't talk
sense,
about
actually.
that.
Yeah, like
But yeah, a place to go and explore and like look for hidden or spooky stuff. So popular with teenagers around the time.
yeah.
Um, and later on discovered to have been heavily contaminated by the byproducts from the explosives that were made and stored there. So yeah, but supposedly it's been cleaned up since.
Sure it has.
But
Sure it
so
has.
yeah, I mean that's the official story, and we're
When you
sticking to
think clean, you think West Virginia.
it. But
Okay.
go on, yeah, you can go on.
I was just saying, I feel I need to stand up for the state. It is a very nice state. It's run down, but it's
Okay.
that's not bad. Anyway, I was just
So one other important element about the TNT area, it was formerly and might be again, I'm not sure on this, but the McClintock Wildlife Area. So it had been set aside as like a wildlife preserve. Then war happened, and they needed the space to like hide munitions, I guess. So uh, it started out as a place where a lot of wild things were that might come into play later. We will see. So, those for the span of weeks or a few months, it would show up, Mothman, and people would see it flying by their cars. One couple said it chased their car, or like flew alongside it, going nearly 100 miles an hour, and didn't seem to break a sweat. But by and large, it never hurt anybody. It would just show up, scare people sometimes, and just sort of go on and do its thing. That
Yep.
is until the Silver Bridge collapsed the next year. Uh, and this is where Mothman got its reputation for being around disaster areas, either trying to warn people or trying to, or causing the disasters. It's unclear. But the Silver Bridge was a bridge that connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio. And around I have December written. I don't have the exact date, but it was a Friday. I remember during rush hour, the bridge collapsed,
Yep.
and 46 people died during that. And at the time, at least, it was the worst bridge collapse in American history. But leading up to the tragedy, people said they saw the Mothman either perched on the bridge or flying around it, and it was trying to warn people. It didn't do a very good job, apparently. And if it caused the bridge, well, the bridge to collapse, I should say, then I guess mission accomplished. Um, I should mention the bridge was like 40 years old by that point, so accidents happen. So this is really what Mothman is known for, by and large. This particular collapse, it showing up, leading up to it, and then mostly not being heard from again. There's a caveat there, but for the most part, its sightings happened in like 1966, 1967, and that's really where most of the credible sources sort of drop off the map. Credible in heavy quotes. And I say that because you mentioned a book earlier, the same title as the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, written by God, hang on,
John Keel.
thank you. Who I tracked this book down. I picked up, and I didn't buy a copy, but I checked out a copy of it from the library. I found this one and another one called, I believe, Mothman: The Facts Behind the Fiction. Don't remember the author of that one off the top of my head, but
that one might be one of the guys they interviewed at Unsolved.
it was.
He was the author, the
Yeah.
guy who looks like a 70s rocker.
Yep.
Like with the hair.
And and his book was the more credible of the two, because
Okay.
that his book was a collection of newspaper clippings, interviews with people that he conducted himself, people who had seen Mothman or had been in the area, and actual like notes from diaries and things that he was able to procure, and that he was allowed to publish. So it's about as factual as you can come for this sort of thing, or because it was all just stuff that had been printed before and talking to people who had been there. The other book, The Mothman Prophecies, was a book I didn't actually like. The movie, I couldn't make it through because Mothman, to the point where I read, barely featured into it. See, this Keel guy was a big. I might still be. I'm not sure if he's still in the business or still alive. He probably is. but his main focus is UFOs, like hard line, aliens, UFOs, that sort of thing, as far as I've been able to tell. And boy, does it come through in his book, because it starts off talking a bit about like, oh, in the 60s there was this thing, but let me tell you about Men in Black. And most of the book is him talking about Men in Black, from what I read anyway.
This is what author?
The Mothman Prophecies guy, Keel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like picking up a book on any subject, like say dinosaurs, and it being going a few pages in and then being like, let me tell you about cavemen. It's like, no, that's not what I came here to read. But I guess he needed to fill the space with something. And it's not entirely disconnected from Mothman, because supposedly during the time that the sightings were happening, these men in black in like nondescript cars would show up. And they all had a very kind of robotic mannerism to them, like very neutral, expressionless, emotionless. And they'd go up to people, primarily witnesses, or even more commonly newspaper reporters, and start asking them like, what would you do if someone told you to print a story about a UFO? You shouldn't do that, that kind of thing. And it's just, lather, rinse, repeat of account after account after account of that sort of thing in a book called The Mothman Prophecies. And it lost me, because it didn't seem focused on the subject at hand. Are they weird? Yes. Are they connected? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm reading something here too about that book. Says it connected to UFOs, flying men, Men in Black, Native American thunderbirds, the Garuda of Buddhist and Hindu lore, which is like a creature that has some wings. I looked up a picture here. And even ghosts. He said he had theories of ultra terrestrials, not
It's
being
all over
from
the
outer
place.
space, but from being a reality unlike ours.
Yeah. So compared to the book that was just full of newspaper clippings and stuff, yeah, this one was hard to swallow.
Is the other one by a guy named Barker?
I want to say yes.
There's another book by Gray Barker called The Silver Bridge.
It's not that one.
No,
also
not that
a book
it's like
about
it's
the
called
Mothman.
Mothman.
The
myths
fact
and-
behind the fiction,
Okay.
or something
Fact
like
behind the
that.
This was
Hang on,
published in 1970, 5 years before Keel's book, and Barker is the first person they believe to introduce the concept of Men in Black. In his 1956 book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, although his credibility was never good because he was personally involved in hoaxes throughout his career.
Yeah. So the actual title was Mothman, The Facts Behind the Legend, by Donnie Sargent Jr.
So we can thank the whole Mothman thing for the smashing 1997 hit starring Will Smith and
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, bizarrely. And with that being said, Mothman has, despite there being at its core so little concrete about it, it has resonated with popular culture. As you mentioned, Men in Black. There are fan sites and merchandise being produced about Mothman, not just in West Virginia, but like, as far as I can tell, from people based all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Making
I
Mothman.
mean, there's a enemy in one of the Game Boy Castlevania games. One of the ones where when you kill the enemies, you can absorb their souls. And Mothman, you have to like do something to get him to appear, and then you can kill. Which one is it? It's got to be Harmony of Dissonance. No, not Harmony of Dissonance. Dawn of Sorrow.
Dawn of Sorrow. I was thinking that, or Portrait of Ruin, but
yeah. No, because Portrait of Ruin doesn't have the one where you absorb their soul from every enemy.
Oh, okay.
It's gone.
But with that being said, though, in Japan, of all places, Mothman is actually really big, because I mean, you folks at home can't see, the picture I've got behind me, but it's a screen cap from a different series of games, Shin Megami Tensei, where Mothman features in most all of those in at least some capacity. Yeah, it's a phenomenon, despite being very ill-defined. Like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it try to prevent disasters, or does it cause them? Is it an alien, or is it some sort of mutant? I mean, no one really knows anything about it, anything concrete. But it's captured people's imagination, despite all of that. So let me take a quick look here.
Not to mention a
Um,
couple of comic book characters also inspired by him. Mothman is one of the original character, one of the Minutemen in Watchmen was Mothman.
oh
I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
that's pulled directly from that, and I believe there's
Mhm.
a Batman villain, isn't there?
Yeah, I was just going to
Uh,
mention I have this podcast to thank because apparently in 1967
mhm.
they had a pilot for season 3 of my Batman show that I love, which was the pilot to bring in Batgirl, and they had a villain which was Killer Moth from the comic
Hmm.
books, which I've never seen this footage, so I was watching right before we came online. It was interesting. It was like 7.5 minutes of Batgirl's first appearance on the TV show. Killer Moth basically was a guy reading in a library who has a gun that he can shoot and make a cocoon around people. But they're theorizing as well here. This all led into 1966, where a newspaper, Huntington Herald Dispatch, put out the headline "Bird, Plane, or Batman? Mason contains hunt Mothman," which they think maybe the Mothman got his name actually then because Batman was the popular TV show of the time. So weird full
Nice.
circle here.
Nicely
Wow.
done.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
So I did mention that the first American sighting of Mothman was what I mentioned in 1966. But it's arguable whether it's a strictly American phenomenon, because if you start digging a bit more into its lore, its sightings and whatnot, it may have been and perhaps is still being seen in a lot of other places. Um, so the stuff from the 60s is the most well known, but based on mythology.net that I'm looking at right here, it's possible the first sighting of it may have been actually in 1926 in China, uh, at, you guessed it, a bridge collapse.
Huh.
So it
Hmm.
was.
Wait, are you saying something from China could make it all the way over here to America?
We're editing that out, right?
Nope.
Uh, all right. Anyway, I misspoke a bit. Not a bridge, a dam.
Oh, did you think I
So
meant COVID? I was talking about the observation balloons, but go on.
all right. So the I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but in 1926 there was a collapse of the Xiaoante Dam, uh, which let's see, was preceded by, and I quote, "the appearance of a strange creature in southeastern China. The locals described this creature as a man dragon that could frequently be seen hovering over the dam." On January 19th of that year, the dam collapsed, releasing nearly 40 billion gallons of water into the surrounding farms in the valley. Death toll estimated to be over 15,000.
Oof.
And then there's the American sightings, Silver Bridge. 1978, a mine in Germany collapsed, before which um, some of the miners witnessed a creature that they realized was not a man, but a strange creature with huge wings, appeared to have no head, but had large glowing red eyes on what seemed to be its chest. Um, they stood at the entrance of the mine until the creature let out a terrifying scream that made them run away and away from it and the mine. And then an hour later, the mine collapsed.
So in that case, it
Uh,
clearly saved them.
yes, but it's being attributed. If you really dig into this a bit, it's attributed to being at the sites of disasters, from anything from this sort of stuff to Chernobyl to 9/11.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember when I had gotten into this, I thought everything stopped in 67. Like I
so did
thought
I.
that there were no settings of it, but I'm like, I remember coming across one where someone said they saw near the Twin Towers, and I was like, "What? Are you?
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Quotes. Several days before the terrible attack on September 11th, several people saw a strange flying creature near the Twin Towers. Those who saw the attack report that the same creature was flying parallel to the second plane as it hit the tower. And
Jesus."
take all of this with a grain of salt, but
Yeah.
these are all things that people have reported as seeing. Chernobyl, 1985. Citizens and workers near the power plant reported seeing a large bird-like creature with the body of a man flying around the plants. They claimed the terrifying crying creature had glowing red eyes. 2007, the collapse of the I-35 bridge in Minnesota. After a month of sightings, the bridge collapsed on August 1st, 2007, killing 13 people, injuring 145 others. Fukushima, that nuclear plant explosion, people reported seeing it then. So it's both a more recent thing and a more widespread thing than I was led to believe when I first started researching this all those months ago, if you believe any of these accounts. And in fact, there are sightings that are still going on today. A strange concentration of them seem to be in the Chicago area, as it happens, including at least 3 this year alone in O'Hare Airport. Wow. Or around O'Hare Airport. So this info I'm drawing from something called phantomsandmonsters.com, so make of that what you will. But there are starting from 2011 to the present, there are just dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of accounts of people who have written in saying that they've seen this thing. And if you click on any of them, it's actually fairly well documented, at least what they said. Some of them have photographic evidence, like the people from the site went to the spots that the thing was seen, took shots to establish like what's in the area and that sort of thing. So regardless of your thoughts on websites like these, they at least put in the legwork. So yeah, this is apparently, if it does exist, or it or they, because I mean, it either covers a lot of ground or there's more than one of them, and it's
lives a long time.
Yeah, or there's some sort of population that we've never seen, if any of this is real.
Same problem as like the Bigfoot problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess Mothman does have, if it exists, it does have the advantage of flight, which would allow it to, get to cover more easily. But at the same time, why have there been no compelling photos of it or video or anything? But still, go on.
I was just going to say 2 other little stories here I found on this website. I'm on Den of Geek. They have one about Kiel. So back to Kiel, a family told him that one night their daughter woke up to a large man looming over her with a broad smile and became known as the Grinning Man. Which
that doesn't sound like Mothman to me. That sounds like a bigger problem.
Portrayed into a character in the Mothman prophecy is played by Will Patton. He is the one who says the creepy, famous chapstick line in the movie. I don't know the movie well enough to know that, but
I may have fallen asleep before that part.
Another one here, it says one of Keel's early interviewees was a lady named Connie Carpenter, who said they saw a huge flying gray figure with red eyes on the way home from church. And seeing the creature left her with eye burn or red, watery, swollen eyes, which are also symptoms that Keel associated with UFO encounters. So, more interesting stuff there.
That is also an element of the encounters with Mothman. People who see it, a lot of them report just an undefinable feeling of dread or fear. That can linger for days afterwards. Not so it's not so much the eye thing, but like witnessing it seems to engender in some people just like a instinctual fear reaction. So make of that what you will. But it is part of the lore that also keeps cropping up.
I mean, it seems like a lot of the appearances have been where something really bad is about to happen. So if there's any credence to this whatsoever, I mean.
So it's making me very hesitant about heading down for our next guys' weekend if it's been seen around O'Hare.
I was going to say, why don't you avoid O'Hare there for a while, Cody?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and just for a bit of perspective, the most recent report of that in O'Hare itself, where was that? Was from January 17th. So yeah, just over a month ago. So make of that what you will. That said, we mentioned earlier that this thing is so outlandish in its appearance, behavior, general physiology that it leads to a lot of questions of what it is, where it came from. And I think this would be a good time to start exploring some of that. Cody, it seemed like you had some material stockpiled for that sort of thing. Did you want to kick us off on that subject?
As far as theories on what he is?
Yeah. Or where it came from, or yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have a stockpile, but there's a lot of things that link him to a various list of common answers for things we've looked at here in the past, including, ghosts, including aliens or beings from alternate dimensions. There's, of course, the belief that there is some sort of a mutation or evolution of some pre-existing creature on Earth that has made essentially a new species that could be out there, and tied in with the idea of the TNT plant, the munitions factory, and maybe something happened there. Well, I don't know. Oh, the one I was going to mention earlier, this is probably what you were alluding to, is we can't forget the most important theory as to what the Mothman really is, and this is presented to you by a pseudo investigator by the name of Fox Mulder, who I gather was big in the 90s and early 2000s. But he said that the creature may in fact be evolved versions of the first Spanish conquistadors who were in the forest hundreds of years ago. Because of their seclusion, they may have had drastic adaptations that happened to keep them alive. And this is a creature who presumes other people's presence in their territory could be threatening. And at the end of said episode, Detour from the X-Files, he urges Scully to get out of her room, and then the camera pans down to below the bed where there's a pair of glowing red eyes.
I think I can one up that,
All
believe it or
right.
not.
All right.
Yeah. So the most outlandish theory I stumbled across was that, and once you start to take into account the reports from elsewhere in the world, this, whatever weight this may have held, it just kind of collapses. But still, the most outlandish theory I stumbled across was that, and I wish I were making this up, Mothman is the result of an Indian curse, or Native American curse, I should say,
Oh, I
to be
did
more
see that.
politically correct. So the story behind this one is that during the, I believe it was the Civil War, it may have been the Revolutionary War, but anyway, hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, I think revolutionary.
Revolutionary, yeah. There was one of the local Indian or Native American chiefs, whose name translated as Chief Cornstalk. I believe I'm going to butcher the pronunciation on this again, but it was Chief K. Tugwa. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. But the rough translation is Cornstalk. He wanted to make peace with the American colonists in the area, because, well, bloodshed doesn't help anybody. And essentially things went sideways. He ended up getting imprisoned. His son came to try and barter for his release. His son got imprisoned. Some colonists ended up getting killed while they were out hunting, like a week later. And in revenge, the colonists killed, Chief Cornstalk and his son. And with his dying breath, he laid a 200-year curse on the area, which, if you could believe that this is verbatim, it seems like an awful lot to utter in one's dying breath, but this is what I see on mythology.net. Quote, "I was the borderman's friend. Many times I have saved him and his people from harm. I never warred with you, but only to protect our wigwams and lands. I refused to join your pale-faced enemies with the redcoats. I came to the fort as your friend, and you murdered me. You have murdered by my side my young son. For this, may the curse of the Great Spirit rest upon this land. May it be blighted by nature. May it even be blighted in its hopes. May the strength of its peoples be paralyzed by the stain of our blood."
Come closer. I'm not done.
Yeah, that is an awful lot to gasp out as you're reading out.
How many more years of curse do we got going down?
Well, that was in, I
That's done.
believe,
It's
yeah,
over.
it was in 1777. So that would have put the appearance of Mothman at the very tail end of that 200-year span.
Oh, okay. I thought you said the
Which,
Civil War. I guess he must have said Revolutionary. And
I initially said civil, but I
think he
and Cody
revised the
corrected me
statement.
to revolutionary.
very good.
Yeah. Again, old notes here. But so if you discount the report of from 40 years prior to that from China, it almost has that kind of spooky verisimilitude to it. But if we're extending the Mothman mythos all to the international scale, and all that, it really kind of falls through. Also, why would the curse take that long to really kick in, and why would it manifest as something that tried to get people to avoid a disaster? But that is the craziest theory I've seen regarding where this thing came from.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Otherwise, but yeah, as we mentioned, there are thoughts that it's an alien, thoughts that the chemicals in the soils somehow mutated something to to become this man moth combination, because apparently we're living in the Ninja Turtles timeline here. That's not how genetics works, but there's a lot, and there's a lot of theories out there, if you can call them that, and not a whole lot to support any of them, really.
We didn't mention the sandhill crane theory, which is a long time famous one also.
Oh, that is fair.
Just merely that it is a bird that exists in our world with a huge wingspan and has some red kind of glowing-ish, I don't know about glowing, but has red around its eyes, so it could give the appearance maybe of that. It does have a fairly big wingspan. I've been trying to research birds while you've been chatting here, and the problem with most of these birds is when they flap their wings outward. Like I was looking at owls, because there were theories for that. They generally flap them, what I want to say, like they extend them more horizontally than vertically. So these reports of like the large wings that kind of go from head to feet of the Mothman don't really match up with the way bird wings look when they're extended. This is fairly close. I mean, at least it's outward. I just sent a picture over of Sandhill Crane, but even that is like, I mean, look at the legs. I don't know how you would mistake that for anything other than a bird.
That is fair. And I've actually been fairly close to Sandhill Cranes on one or two occasions myself. Like I was heading somewhere on a trip, and there were a couple of them crossing the road, so we had to stop. And I got out to take a picture, and this thing was like maybe 5 or 6 feet away from me, and they're big, but they're not like 7 to 10 feet tall big.
Okay.
And they do move kind of weirdly, but their necks are long. So if it was standing there like in its normal pose, its head would be far above where its wings were. The closest thing I can think of is, in terms of like the profile that would fit, would be like a great blue heron. Because when those are kind of like crouched over, they do look like they don't have a head, and the wings do kind of extend a little above the where the head would be, but they're smaller than sandhills, so I don't know how anyone could mistake one of those for a man-sized creature with glowing red eyes. But I mean, in terms of anything that we know of that actually exists in the world verifiably, I mean, the sandhill crane idea is probably the best bet we're going to get.
Yeah, I was even going back and looking at the hammerhead bat again that we talked about for the Jersey Devil. Just like something that's massively has a big wingspan. I mean, this has creepy eyes as well. But the interesting thing about this is I feel like the most famous, despite all the stories, the most famous one is probably that couple that saw it by the TNT warehouse and then claimed that it followed their car so much. And I'm just thinking, like, if I was in that car out in the middle of quote unquote nowhere in a reputed spooky area and saw, anything with any size to it whatsoever, bird, owl, or whatever, that would probably spook me enough that maybe I saw something in that moment. I can't explain why they felt like it was following them, though. That's a bit weird. But really, it just takes like that one famous report to leak, and then other people could be like, oh yeah, there was this thing, and then details could be slightly embellished here and there, and pretty soon you have the Mothman.
We've talked to people, I know you have, Cody, who say that the freaking Paulding light followed them out. of like followed their car. So like, I don't mean to be a jerk, but that didn't happen.
You weren't there. No.
It didn't happen. It can't happen like that. Anyway, but like your mind, you create things and then you tell stories, you embellish. My best thought, I don't know if it's necessarily a sandhill crane that they saw, but my guess is it was just a really big fucking bird. Maybe it was an unnaturally big bird. Maybe you know how we have, like, I was in Sam's Club once in Virginia, of all places. I was in Virginia.
Ooh, West Virginia.
And there was a man who was like 7.5 feet tall. Okay.
Damn.
Most people are not 7.5 feet tall. And when I saw him, I was like, oh, shit, wow. Like, I mean, he was a legitimate giant.
Yeah.
So there has to be, like, even though most birds are of a certain size, maybe, like, I don't know, once in a generation, a really big bird gets born.
And it goes on to teach children's television.
Yes.
Oh, geez.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't discount that they saw something out there. That seems entirely plausible.
Yeah. Well, there was the guy in the UM episode, the only one he's also the one who says West Virginia.
Yes.
But he says that was the ugliest and the scariest and biggest bird, and I do mean bird, that I've ever seen. So, I mean, he's obviously saying it's bigger than normal and it's just unsettling, but he definitely said it was a bird.
Well, Matt, can't you, before we get to the end here, can't you tell us you lived there? Didn't you say you went out to look for this thing once or twice?
Well, okay, I was on tour in the state of West Virginia. I worked at a theater down there for like 5 summers, and then I did their year-round educational tour. And one of our gigs was in Point Pleasant. We went to the Point Pleasant Library, and like literally the only thing I wanted to do while I was there was make sure to see the Mothman statue, which I saw. It's a real, like, you can find a picture of it easily online.
Yeah.
It is a pretty impressive looking statue. It looks really menacing. I mean, it looks, I don't know. It's a nice statue.
Yeah.
The town is really, really, really quite small. It's nice. We ate at a Mexican place. I ordered flan, which was, they served me vanilla custard. And I'm like, this is not flan. And they're like, well, we know, but like, out here, people aren't accustomed to that. So we serve this. And I'm like, all right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Note to self: never order flan in West Virginia.
Other places it was fine.
Okay.
Just that one weird place in Point Pleasant. Now, I was looking on Wikipedia because I can't remember exactly, and it says that there are like 5,000 residents as of the 2020 census, and that's a really small community there. I'm gonna double check that right now.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Point Pleasant. What? There we are. Yeah. The census, population 4,101. Now, again, I will assume that this is a misspeak again in the UM episode, because obviously it's not necessarily obviously very fact worthy. But one of the other things they say is, after the Silver Bridge collapses, Stack says, in the biggest disaster to ever befall the Point Pleasant community. And I'm like, what else could you possibly compare it to? Like, why not just say the only disaster? Like, I mean, maybe there's something else. Maybe a tornado ripped through there or something. I don't know. But like
the great flan switcheroo of 1927.
It would have been 2009 or 10. I don't remember if it was a fall show or it had to be a spring show because it was nice outside. 2010.
Okay.
2000.
Huh. So yeah, that also, it brings up an interesting point, because rumors can spread through a community of any size, but a smaller, more tight-knit community, it seems like, where a lot of people know each other, it seems like this sort of thing could balloon out of control maybe a bit more easily than something like in New York or Chicago, or a large metropolitan area where there's tons of people, and if only one or two see something, sure, it's just going to be written off as some crazy whack job. But if you're in this town of 4,000-ish people, maybe people take that sort of thing a bit more seriously. If their cousin's boyfriend or whatever says he saw something, well, I mean, uh, Jared isn't a liar. Maybe there's something out there. Maybe that plays into something about why it gained as much traction as it did in that community.
And again, maybe they just saw a slightly oversized bird that
Yeah.
was acting very just like territorial, maybe. And that, I mean, birds are freakish too. The other day, this was a couple years ago, on the barn outside my house, there was a vulture with its wings out, and I swear to God, that was the most terrifying thing I had seen in a long time. It just looked freaky to me. I'd never seen I was like, my dog was outside at the time, and I'm just like, I better get you inside. I don't want that vulture coming down for you. I know they're scavengers, aren't they? But
I think they're also opportunists. Like if the chance presented itself, yeah, it could have taken a swipe for your dog, but not likely. But it could have happened.
Now, Matt, did they have the Mothman Museum when you were there or not?
they might have. They probably did.
Wow.
But here's the thing. It's a missed opportunity. But my tour partner had to get back because it was a weekend show, and he worked at J.C. Penney's, I believe. He had a second job on the side. I didn't, because I thought I could live off tour pay, which is probably why I lived in a rat-infested basement. But yeah.
Fair.
Well, it looks like it has some pretty cool stuff there, is what I was getting at.
Yeah, if I ever make it back there for some reason,
It has all the original clippings and handwritten eyewitness testimony reports, etc.
Nice.
Some
So probably
things-
similar to what was in that one book I read, The Facts Behind the Legend.
Yeah,
Something.
probably.
Signed by Robert Kennedy. I'm interested what that is.
But yeah, you mentioned the territorial aspect of a large bird, that maybe it had a nest around or something and it didn't like people poking around in the area. Yeah, even though they're only about maybe at most 5 feet tall, I would not want to mess with a sandhill crane that was angry. They've got, I mean, their beaks are probably as wide or as long as my hand.
Yeah.
They could do some damage if they really wanted to. So
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard stories of like geese just like attacking people and like pecking at their legs, and like I don't know if they broke the legs or really hurt them or not, but like birds are nasty.
They can be. Yeah, and there a lot of these accounts of the Mothman do mention like a high-pitched scream, or like one that's kind of like variable in its modulation. And
yeah, that was something I wanted to mention. There was another show. I don't even remember what the name of the show was, but one of the things they did was they were driving. They set up a test where people had to drive by like a cutout of the Mothman or whatever, and they were variable sizes. Like one was really big, one was really small, one was medium. There were several of them, and they drove by them at a fairly, like, I don't know, 60 miles an hour, 70 miles, whatever, in the dark, and they had to judge how big it was when they got back.
Okay.
And nobody could do it. Nobody could do it. It was like always wildly off. Like, yeah. So even people who were in the car together couldn't agree on how big it was.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Interesting.
Maybe that was Monster Hunter, or
that's cool though. Cool.
I don't know. I would love to find that episode again. If I would have been more prepared, I would have searched that out.
But no, that is it's like actually a really damning piece of evidence, because it illustrates why eyewitness testimony is something they should always kind of take with a grain of salt, because even cops, like when they're trying to, they bring someone in and they're like, oh, okay, identify, who attacked you from these 6 guys standing here. It's not always reliable, and that's when you're looking at a human being, something that you've seen all the time, you can recognize, that you probably saw in the daylight, and human eyes aren't generally the best when it's dark. And yeah, even people sitting in the same vehicle together can't agree how big something was that they saw as they were speeding by it. that is pretty telling. And sandhill cranes, by their nature, aren't really nocturnal. But if one was out and about at nights and was spooked or angry or whatever, I could see people, seeing that as being as appearing a lot bigger than it actually is.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh my god, it came out of the bushes.
Especially if
and
it's
it was
not right by you. If it was right by you, that would be
Mhm.
that would
Yeah.
be something.
Yeah, but at a distance, and with its wings out, and you're seeing it just briefly as you're going by in a car. Yeah, all that seems to add up to a very mundane explanation in my eyes. Um, I can't really vouch for the wildlife you'd see in, say, China or Ukraine or the various other places around the world where these sightings have apparently happened, but it could also be a very similar explanation, depending.
Well, I think again, the idea that they saw something out at that place that night, plausible.
Mhm.
Maybe if this is just something that is put into the collective consciousness to where the next time somebody sees something, they say, oh, could it be what those people saw? And then from there, it kind of takes off as like this legend. It's still interesting, though, even like thinking of people seeing it before these disasters happened. I mean, that is an interesting concept because I don't know for sure what the rationale would be to make up that story. I guess other than just to associate it, like that you're the person who associated it with that disaster that was about to happen. I don't really know what the payoff for that is. Like it's a weird thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Sometimes fame is all it takes, especially, well, I mean, not especially, but, if you're living in a little town of a couple thousand people and, there's not much going on, or you find things that, you find that things are dull, you want to spice things up a bit, maybe make a name for yourself, impress somebody. I'm not saying that is the motivation behind the original sightings, but
Or you maybe you saw something. You
Mhm.
saw something that wasn't really. I mean, that freaked you out at the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it just more every time you tell it, you had slightly bit more detail than you did before, almost like you're lying to yourself. But when you tell it 20 years later, you actually believe that it was as outlandish as you say. That's how we
Mm.
get stories about the Paulding light chasing cars. Maybe
Yes.
maybe you drove away
Well,
and it looked like it was getting closer for a second, and then you start telling it, and then it got a little closer next time you tell it, and then next time you're like driving down 28 and it's still like following you like a helicopter or something.
Mhm. And like at first you're going like 60 miles an hour, then 70, then oh my god, it was keeping pace at 100 without breaking a sweat, that sort of thing. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
But Cody actually mentioned something that I wanted to touch on as far as this sort of stuff is concerned.
Mhm.
You mentioned it's kind of a fun concept. Well, to me, that it's a lot of the supernatural or conspiracy, those type of unsolved mysteries. I find them fun, even if I don't believe them. Like they're cool, even if I don't believe them. Like I really like the movie JFK. I don't think it's a documentary by any stretch of the imagination. That's a good example. Like I think it's interesting. Like I think it's kind of cool,
Mhm.
but I don't necessarily buy into the giant conspiracy. I think it's probably more mundane, but I think it's fun to like get into that intrigue sort of a thing. But
Sure.
same sort of thing with like Mothman and ghosts. West Virginia, by the way, there is not just one cryptid there. There's a ton of random cryptids from all over the place.
Huh.
There's one similar in a similar area. I think it's called the sheep squatch. It's like a Sasquatch, but like part sheep or something. I've heard that one once before. The one
hey.
I'm most familiar with is from Flatwoods. It's called the Flatwoods Monster, or
Oh yeah, I that one I have heard of at least.
okay. And again, that was just something that appeared like one night, I think. It probably was just somebody drunk or something. I don't know, but it was like this thing in like a gown with big glowing red eyes. I think that they thought it was an alien, or
Yeah, it
I
had
don't
a
know.
had a head like an onion or a chestnut or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's something else from Grafton. I just know that because it's one of the more notable towns of the area, Grafton.
Huh.
but
Okay.
something Grafton monster. I don't know. But there were like when I was like looking up cryptids in West Virginia. Again, this was like 10 years ago that I was looking this stuff up. But like, I was just like, huh, there's all sorts of cryptids from West Virginia. I guess that's what happens when you have a random mountain state with like depressed communities all over the place.
Yeah. I was trying
Neat.
to look up too. I know they have the festival there. I can't find any figures. It says it's mostly free to attend this festival every year, but there has to
the
be some
Mothman
kind of
Festival or the Flatwoods Festival? I believe
no,
there's
the
one each.
Mothman. I mean, it says it's free to go attend everything, but there must be an economic impact. We talked about like
Oh yeah,
tourism
they go to
as,
they go to the Mexican restaurant and get their custard.
they're flying, yeah, no doubt. So there's always that, aspect too of like, can we make money off this thing? Like, I don't know, Jersey Devil we talked maybe a little bit about, not so much, but like when I was out this past New Year's over the West Coast, again, it was Bigfoot this, Bigfoot that, Bigfoot this, it's just like dollar, dollar, dollar everywhere making money off this stuff. So well, how are we finishing this one, Justin? You gonna make us
Well, I mean, when we do these sort of cryptozoological, paranormal sorts of things, I mean, we've generally done like a 1 to 10 rating of how plausible we think that this creature exists. But do we want to do that since we all seem fairly certain that something was witnessed in all these cases, or do we want to do it a little differently? Do we want to do like the odds of it being something more
other
than
than a
just a
bird?
bird? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I think we're all in
Or
agreement that something was there.
yeah. Oh, we could always say what we want it to be and then what we think it is.
We could. Yeah, we can do it that way. And all right, so would you like me to go first then? Or one of you or
Go ahead.
all right. Um so the idea that there's some sort of supernatural alien interdimensional being, ultra dimensional being is what
Ultra.
what's his face put it. I mean that's kind of neat. It plays on the whole appeal of there being more to the world, more to reality than what we can see directly in front of us. And I understand the draw of that. Like just recently, this weekend is when I dug up the more recent sightings of Mothman. The fact that there are people still reporting it to this day in various parts of the world. I mean, to me, that's fascinating because they're seeing something. Most of them anyway. I would think there's probably some that are just trying to, get their 15 minutes of fame or whatever. But I I do kind of wish it was some sort of precognitive alien thing that's here trying very ineffectually to warn people about danger. I mean, you think it would say something or like use its feet to write something in the sand, an actual message like, hey, stay away from this bridge. But it's still the thought that there's something out there that's trying to help, is it's neat. Sadly, I don't believe that. I'm pretty sure this is just some sort of bird, some sort of or other normal mundane animal that's actually there wouldn't be anything it could be but a bird. So a crane, a vulture, owl, something that's large that people might not see right away, or they might not see all the time, especially at night. And they just misjudge its size, they misjudge how aggressive it is, and it's just kind of a coincidence that it happens to be around things that go wrong. I mean, would they have that also ties into the idea of selective bias. Like, if who knows how many times people saw a large bird flying around, say that bridge that fell down before it fell down, but they happen to see it the day leading up to it, and the bridge collapses, and they have that connection in their mind all of a sudden, where they may have seen large birds flying around that area dozens of times before that. They might not have paid it any mind because it was there and then gone, and then life continued. So I think a lot of this is just people wanting there to be more than there is, and all that there is some sort of large bird. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I largely agree with that, except I really hope it's a mutant bird from the munitions factory that's covered up by government stooges who dress in black. That's my hope. Like, I think that would make the better movie, I think, than a really big aggressive bird. Which
Yeah.
I think it's probably just a really big aggressive bird. Like I said, maybe it was just one that was like freakishly big, like that guy I saw in Sam's Club in Virginia. Like that's kind of what I think. And what you were saying about it, they just see it around the bridge, and then all of a sudden it. This is how I picture that happening. It collapsed, and then someone was like, I thought I saw a Mothman right before then, and then someone else was like, "Oh yeah, I thought I saw it." Yeah, it. That's how.
Sure,
But
without it needing
I
to be
really
there.
hope it's a legitimate Mothman. I really want to believe that. I mean, that would be amazing, but sadly, I don't buy into it.
I also can't believe this is anything other. It might not even, I'm saying could be a bird that they saw originally, and that may actually be too exciting of an answer. In all honesty, like anything could make your eye suddenly get attracted in the darkness, like a quick flicker of motion or a leaf flowing by. I mean, anything literally could have. Who hasn't had like moments where they think they see something out of the corner of their eye, and if you yell like, "Oh my God, there's a thing over there!" Like everybody around you is going to jump up and bust ass to get out of there as well. So I can't imagine that whatever they saw could have been all that exciting. Quite frankly, I think it'd be cool if there was some kind of creature that lived like at the Foreman munitions base. I think that's a cool idea. I don't really know. I wish it was something really cool. I can't explain how different it would be again than anything we have in our world. Just makes it seem really impossible that there's something evolutionary that different out there that just has evaded mass sightings for this whole time. I was thinking too, like even, with the bridge collapse or things like 9/11 or wherever, they always say like animals, at least, I don't know if birds per se, but animals are like more perceptive to what's happening around them. So like let's say that bridge was just beginning to collapse, like it would make sense that there was a bird on it somewhere that started to fly off the top of the bridge because it knew what was about to happen, and then people saw the thing and then the bridge collapsed. So maybe that is some part of it too, is just like they're more perceptive and can react to things just that split second faster than humans can. And then that's their explanation on like why they saw that thing right beforehand. I mean, that could explain a lot of the things, the bridges, or even 9/11. There could have been a bird in the sky by the building that knew some shit was going to happen and got out of there as quick as it could. Doesn't really explain. I saw one report of like one of the mines where like the creature was like blocking the entrance. Like that doesn't necessarily gel, that it was like telling them they couldn't go back into the mine and then it collapsed, I guess. But I can't imagine this was anything. This seems really like, I don't even, down near the Jersey Devil of believability, I think, overall on this one. Although I kind of agree with Matt. I kind of want it to be something super cool out there. But I don't know that this is. It would help if we had some more concrete footage of this. Part of it being a 60s legend, maybe that hurts it a little bit.
Yeah, I did.
Well, they have.
Oh, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I did. In looking through all these various links, I did bring up a grainy image, a more contemporary image that someone says is the Mothman.
Okay.
I'll see if I can. Oh yeah, actually there it is. I think this is it anyway. Yeah, I'll just send this to you guys in the chat. You tell me what you think. There's nothing around it for any sort of scale or comparison or indication of like where this might be or anything, but it is, yeah, this is the best we got as far as I'm aware.
Wow.
Yeah, to me it looks like either a bat or like a guy in a wingsuit. I wish you folks at home could see this because it's up there with like the grainy Bigfoot images that we have.
Yeah.
Looks like a man in a glider.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. or like even a butterfly with nothing around it for a sense of where it is in the sky or
Yeah.
a scale or how big
When
it
you
might
look
be.
at the
It's-
bottom of the 3 pictures, like the actual shot, like it's so tiny.
Yeah,
Not that you could get a good photograph of something that was hundreds of feet in the air anyway, but especially if it's moving.
right. But I mean, it's hard to tell if it is actually that far out there or if it is just something smaller that was close to the camera that looks like it's farther out there because there's nothing around it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got nothing on that one, but that's the best photo I've been able to find of Mothman.
Well, yeah. I bookmarked that other page I sent you guys that has the most famous cryptid in each state. That could be some fun future episodes.
Heck yeah.
I've heard of a lot of them, but not a lot of them also. So
What's it got from Michigan?
Probably the dog man, I would imagine, but let's see.
Yeah, I think it was something like a dog man.
Yep, the Michigan dog man.
Yep.
I was hoping it'd be the melon heads.
Oh, that they're on here, but it's a different state.
Oh. So what you can take away from this, dear listener, is that there's plenty more weird stuff out there where we could talk about, and I have a feeling we'll get to a lot of it.
Yep.
Because while I have a feeling we're going to probably reach similar conclusions on a lot of it, there's always an interesting story behind this sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I think too, like some of the more recent cryptids, like there is disputable footage over those. Like, so we could get into some of the more modern ones too, where like people claim they have videos and photographs of these things.
Care to throw out any teasers for a potential?
Well, I can't think of the name of the one, but I think I had shared with you guys a long time ago, probably before I even started the podcast, or maybe it was around one of the earlier episodes of like the shot. Somebody has the video of them like filming across the river with like the bridge over the river, and there's like a creature that's very clearly like pulling itself along the bottom of this bridge. Like you can see it going across the frame of the camera. I don't know what that is or if it has a name or anything, but
I do remember that now.
That's at least a video that we could argue about, you know?
Sure, yeah. And yeah, I would totally be game for that. I feel like it's been way too long since we've done one of these, and the research behind it, even if we are potentially disappointed with what we dig up, digging in is part of the fun. It's the journey, not the destination, I think. And there's always so many weird out there elements to these stories that, regardless of whether the explanation ends up being a bird, or a guy in a suit, or something more interesting,
like a bird in a guy suit.
Oh man, there we go.
Right?
But yeah, I mean, regardless of what the ultimate explanation is, the path we take to get there, I think, is a big part of the fun with these. So that said, I guess, do we want to call it here or?
Yeah.
All right. So I have a feeling we've got another cryptid topic in a not terribly distant future at this rate. So look forward to it. And until next time, whatever we end up doing, this has been another episode of
Friends.
Occasionally not disagreeing. Occasionally not disagreeing. Occasionally not disagreeing. Occasionally not disagreeing.
The Men in Black.
I was singing that in the UM theme song.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know if you caught that, but that's what I was trying to do.
I did. It's always a jumble of noise when we do these.
I was doing Will Smith pre Chris Rock.
I was just doing whatever.
Fair enough.
All right.
All right, this has
bye,
been fun.
everybody.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.